If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. Also, drop a like on the video so it does better in YouTube's algorithm. Also, go check out my second to last video. There was a problem with YouTube's sub box, so a lot of people did not get notified of it, so it was a video on James Harden being traded from OKC. If that interests you and you haven't seen it yet, go give it a watch. But today I wanted to talk about the San Antonio Spurs and the decline the organization has seen in the past few years. The Spurs over the last 2 decades have been viewed as the beacon of basketball excellence, the perfect model for how a franchise should run. The team has won 5 championships in 15 years, led by Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan. Now, over the past month or so, which basically means over the past year, I have had the Spurs in my crosshairs. I made a video on Tim Duncan where I basically said the organization had way less to do with the Spurs' success than Duncan did, much less in fact, and I did a video on the Kawhi Leonard trade where I criticized San Antonio for the move immensely. And in general, not even just over the past month, I have felt that this organization has been given an unearned sense of majesty, like it can do no wrong. I predicted Kawhi wanting out of San Antonio, and I pretty much immediately gave them shit for the Kawhi trade when it went down. But today I wanted to specifically focus on the decline of the organization, what went wrong, and how they could potentially turn it around. I think it'd be best to talk about this team from around the time Tim Duncan was coming close to retirement, because as Duncan declined, the organization declined. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. But the 2014 Spurs proved to be a good team that became great with an offensive system brought to you by Greg Popovich being a fucking god. But after that eventually went away, the team started to head away from the championship pedigree. Now don't get me wrong, they were still a damn good team, but I don't think anyone had the Spurs as the championship favorite post-2014. Now, part of this is to blame on the emergence of the Golden State Warriors. Actually, quite a bit of it is. But also, I have always believed that there was a flaw within San Antonio's organization that also led to this downfall. Now, it is unfortunate that Kawhi did not start to hit his peak in the 2015 or 2016 seasons when the Warriors were at least semi-beatable. The Spurs saw a significant drop-off in the 2015 season because they didn't have anyone to fill that superstar role, and the magic of the team ball of this team wasn't really there anymore. Also, Duncan, Parker, and Manu were getting older. Manu was 37, Parker was 32, and Duncan was 38. Because of this, I felt the team was going to have a pretty steep decline, and Kawhi Leonard was going to be left there as the only really good player on the team. Now, many people looked at this and said, well, Kawhi is the next one up. He is going to fill the shoes of Duncan and be the next superstar alongside Greg Popovich to win some championships for San Antonio. However, I looked at it as the Spurs are going to be too good with Kawhi to get any meaningful assets, and then eventually he's going to want out because it's going to be a one-man carry job. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In the 2016 offseason, the Spurs signed LaMarcus Aldridge, which I must say I didn't expect, because the Spurs to this point, and still aren't, they were not a free agency destination. This is easily the biggest free agent signing in the history of the Spurs. And because of this, as well as Kawhi making the jump to being a star player that we were waiting on him to have, the Spurs won 67 games, which was more than they won in 2014 and actually more than they had won in franchise history. This goes unmentioned a lot, but I guess this was just a byproduct of the Warriors winning 73 games. That is seriously a fucking stacked Western Conference. The top two teams had a combined 140 wins. That's just ridiculous. But come playoff time, after they passed the Grizzlies in 4 games in the first round, they faced the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they lost. The team was basically just Kawhi and LaMarcus Aldridge at this point. Tony Parker brought in 10 points in the series, as well as 6 assists per game, but both Duncan and Manu averaged just 6 points. Now, this was fair enough. Manu and Duncan were 38 and 39 respectively. But that's also kind of the point. Those two could not be expected to be great or even really all that good, and that was the issue. The whole reason that I predicted that Kawhi would eventually want out of San Antonio was the age of a good percentage of the players on this roster and them overstaying their welcome. Come next year, and the Warriors, now with Kevin Durant, were officially unbeatable. Kawhi put in a good effort, but he was intentionally injured by Zaza Pachulia. Fuck Zaza Pachulia. All my homies hate Zaza Pachulia. But let's be real. The Warriors were winning that series regardless. I understand the Spurs were likely going to win Game 1, but also the Clippers beat a similar group in 2 games in the first round last year. It's not a big deal. This does not mean much. Kawhi is good, but he was not single-handedly beating Durant, Curry, Clay, and Draymond good. Never was, probably never will be, which makes sense because I don't think Michael Jordan was that good. So, as we know, what followed after this injury could only be described as a gigantic fucking shit show. And this shit show, which eventually caused the overall downfall of the San Antonio Spurs, was caused by the cult of personality around Greg Popovich. Greg really is the source of all of this. I know it's not exactly popular to go after the greatest coach of all time, or at the very least the second greatest coach of all time, but the dynasty that Greg helped build up, he also quite literally destroyed. That doesn't change how great he was. It doesn't change the fact that he helped Duncan build a dynasty in San Antonio, but as I said in the intro, this franchise is given a sense of majesty, and it's because of that Greg Popovich is viewed as impervious to criticism. Both Greg completely fucking up the Kawhi Leonard situation and him being the greatest coach of all time can be true at the same time. Just like Jerry Krause being a great GM helping build a dynasty in Chicago, and him being the damn fool that broke it up are both true. And also him looking like if a booger became a human being. All 3 of those things are true at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. So with that said, the cult of personality around Greg Popovich was the reason why Kawhi Leonard eventually came out of San Antonio. Pop, not so secretly, basically made both Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili make some comments to the media which did not make Kawhi look favorable. Tony saying that he had the same injury and he didn't take this long and that he trusted his team's doctors, and Manu saying it was bad for the team that Kawhi was staying away from the team during his injury recovery. And then Pop said multiple things criticizing Kawhi, including saying that he wasn't really a leader and that Patty Mills was the real leader of the team. Basically, the old guys on this team just shit all over Kawhi Leonard because they bought into their own greatness to the point where they thought they could just do whatever the fuck they wanted without any consequences. Now, as I said, I already thought the writing was on the wall in San Antonio. Aldridge is a good player, but he isn't the greatest second option ever, and Danny Green being the next best player on that team made for a bleak future. But even with that writing on the wall, Greg Popovich made damn sure that Kawhi ended up out of San Antonio. I find it so hilarious how much Kawhi was criticized for how he behaved during this when he was so clearly the one in the right. Greg was trying to force Kawhi to play injured. He did not want to do that, and then Greg decided to be petty to the media about it. And somehow this is Kawhi Leonard's fault. So the Spurs came crumbling down because the ego of Greg Popovich came out of control, and both Parker and Manu made a bunch of comments criticizing Kawhi. So the question now becomes, with all of that said, how do they turn it around and get back to those glory days? Well, first of all, it's going to be a while, and because of this, it's probably going to be without Greg Popovich. The dude is already 71 years old, and it really seems to me like he's coasting. When the Spurs did not have the proper talent to be a dominant offense with one individual in 2014, Greg made potentially the greatest passing offense ever, but now when the talent is not there for the team to be great offensively through one guy, he hasn't done that. It feels like Pop knows that he is coming close to retirement, and he's just coasting. So who replaces him will make a huge difference in the trajectory of this team. I've heard good things about Becky Hammon. I would say let Pop make the call, but also Pop has praised Jim Boylan. So I don't know, man. And then as for the players on this team, I thought Derek White would make a jump this year. He did not. DeJounte Murray came into the year looking great, but then went back to being a little bit above average. What I will say is they should trade a lot of this team. DeRozan probably won't be back. If he is, it'll be on a one-year player option, in which case you should trade him. I don't know if the virus bringing the cap down is going to make him decide to take that option. I suppose we'll see. They should trade LaMarcus Aldridge, trade Rudy Gay, basically trade any veteran player on that team that's worth a damn. I have suggested that the Spurs hit the reset button for the past 2 years now, and been told that's just not what the Spurs do. Well, not making the playoffs was not something that the Spurs did either. Being a trash team was not something that the Spurs did. Greg Popovich not making the team great was not something that he did. So it's time to make some changes. The Spurs ultimately were not bigger than the players on their team, as it was routinely suggested. The Spurs somehow lucked into a situation where they could transition between Duncan to Kawhi, and they fucked that up. And now the franchise has proven to be just about the same as any other franchise in the league. I've said my piece about Duncan, but I don't think this Spurs team would even have one championship without him. So can we please stop talking about the Spurs like they're some magical beacon of basketball excellence? They aren't. Sure, they have proven to be successful. However, over the past few years, they have also proven they're not above anything that other franchises are susceptible to. So that was the downfall of the San Antonio Spurs. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.